I tried to tell you. We all saw the cracks in 2025, but we kept scrolling. We watched the national debt climb past numbers that didn't even make sense anymore. We watched Congress fail to pass a budget for the third year in a row. We watched federal employees go unpaid for months at a time. We watched essential services shut down, reopen, shut down again. We watched the Supreme Court lose its legitimacy. We watched the military struggle to maintain enlistment numbers. We watched foreign allies stop returning our calls. We saw all of it, every warning sign, every indicator that the system was buckling under its own weight. And we did nothing. We posted about it. We argued about it online. We changed our profile pictures. We signed petitions. And then we went back to our lives because we couldn't imagine a world where the United States government simply stopped functioning. We couldn't conceive of it. The idea was too big, too impossible, too apocalyptic. So we ignored it. We kept scrolling. We kept shopping. We kept working and paying taxes and pretending that everything would somehow work itself out, because it always had before. But it didn't work out. It collapsed. Not suddenly, not with a bang. It collapsed the way a building collapses when the foundation has been eroding for decades. Slowly, then all at once. And now I'm standing in Washington, D.C. in March of 2032, and I'm here to tell you what the silence of an empire sounds like. It's been 5 months since anyone saw a functioning federal government. 5 months since the last official press briefing. 5 months since Congress convened. The date people usually cite is October 7th, 2031, because that's when the Treasury Department announced it could no longer process payments. Social Security checks stopped. Military salaries stopped. Federal employee paychecks stopped. Medicare reimbursements stopped. All of it just stopped because there was no money left and no way to borrow more because nobody would lend to us anymore. The international community had lost faith. The dollar was in free fall. And the government, this massive bureaucratic machine that we'd all assumed was permanent and unshakable, just ran out of gas and rolled to a stop. The president gave a speech. I remember that. It was late October, maybe the 15th or 16th. He stood in the Oval Office and told us that this was a temporary situation, that emergency measures were being implemented, that everyone needed to remain calm. And then the broadcast cut out halfway through because the network couldn't afford to keep the satellite uplink running. And that was the last official communication from the White House that anyone heard. After that, it was just rumors, unverified reports, people saying the president had fled to Camp David, other people saying he'd flown to a NATO base in Germany. Some claimed he was still in the White House, holed up with a skeleton crew of loyalists. But nobody knew. Nobody knows.
Because there's no one left to tell us. I'm walking through the National Mall right now, and it's completely silent. Not peaceful silent, not serene silent, the kind of silent that makes your ears ring because your brain can't process the absence of sound. There are no tourists, no school groups taking photos in front of the Lincoln Memorial, no protesters with signs, no joggers, no hot dog vendors, no park rangers, nothing. The grass is overgrown, knee-high in places, gone to seed. The pathways are cracked and buckling. There's trash everywhere, not like normal litter, but the accumulated debris of abandonment. Tents that homeless people set up and then left. Piles of clothes, empty water bottles. The reflecting pool is stagnant, filled with algae, turning green and brown. You can smell it from 50 feet away. The monuments are still here, of course. Stone doesn't disappear just because no one's maintaining it, but they're dirty. The marble is streaked with grime and bird droppings. The inscriptions are hard to read under the layers of accumulated filth. Someone spray-painted "They Lied" across the base of the Washington Monument in letters 6 feet tall. No one cleaned it off because there's no one to clean it off. The Lincoln Memorial has graffiti too. Someone wrote, "Where were you?" on Lincoln's lap. It's weirdly accusatory, and I don't know if they're asking where Lincoln was when we needed him or where we were when the country needed us. Maybe both. I walked up to the White House fence yesterday, just walked right up to it. There are no guards, no Secret Service, no tourists being told to step back. The fence is still there, that black iron barrier that's supposed to keep people out, but the gates are standing open, just open, like someone forgot to close them when they left. And maybe someone did forget. Maybe in those final chaotic days when everyone was evacuating, when federal employees were abandoning their posts to get home to their families, someone just didn't bother to close the gates, because what was the point? I stood there staring at the White House for probably 20 minutes. The building looks smaller than it does in photos, more ordinary. It's dirty white now, not gleaming. The windows are dark, all of them. There are no lights on inside, no movement, no flag flying from the roof. Someone took the flag down, or it fell, or it rotted away. I don't know, but it's not there, and the absence of it is somehow more disturbing than anything else. This building that was supposed to represent American power, American permanence, American exceptionalism. It's just an empty house now, a big, fancy, empty house that no one lives in anymore. I didn't go inside. I thought about it. The gates are open. There's no one stopping me. But I didn't go in because the emptiness of it, the silence, the sense of abandonment, it's terrifying in a way that's hard to explain. It's not the fear of physical danger. It's the fear of confirmation.
As long as I don't go inside, I can tell myself that maybe someone's still there. Maybe there's a skeleton crew maintaining essential functions. Maybe the government exists somewhere in some form. But if I go inside and find nothing but empty rooms and dark hallways and dust, then I have to accept that it's really gone, that the seat of power is powerless, that the center didn't hold. The Capitol building is worse. I walked up there this morning, climbed the steps to the east entrance. The doors are closed but not locked. I pushed one open, and it swung inward with this long, echoing creak that sounded like something out of a horror movie. Inside, it's dark. The electricity is off, has been for months. The only light comes through the windows, these gray shafts of dusty sunlight that make everything look washed out and dead. The marble floors are covered in footprints, tracked in dirt, debris. The rotunda is empty. No guards, no tour groups, no senators rushing to votes. Just empty space and silence, and the wind blowing through somewhere, making this low moaning sound that echoes through the hallways. I stood in the center of the rotunda and looked up at the dome, at that painting of George Washington ascending to heaven, and I thought about how symbolic it was. The father of the country ascending, leaving, abandoning us. And I know that's not what the painting means, but that's what it felt like, standing there in the dark and the silence, like everyone had ascended, like everyone had left, like we'd been abandoned by the very institutions we'd built to protect us. I walked through the Senate chamber. The desks are still there, arranged in their semicircle. Some of them have papers on them, left behind when whoever was sitting there realized there was no point in coming back. I picked up one of the papers. It was a draft bill about agricultural subsidies, dated October 2031. It would never be voted on, would never become law, would never matter. I put it back down and walked out. The danger here isn't zombies or raiders or mutants. The danger is the reality of it. The danger is the packs of wild dogs that have moved into the city, hunting in groups, going through trash, attacking anyone who looks vulnerable. The danger is the lack of food. The grocery stores were looted months ago. The restaurants are empty. The federal cafeterias that used to serve thousands of employees every day are abandoned. The danger is the water.
The municipal systems are failing. No one's treating the water. No one's maintaining the pipes. You can't drink from the tap anymore. You have to find bottled water or boil it or risk getting sick. The danger is the silence itself, the psychological weight of being in a city built entirely around power and governance, and finding it completely powerless and ungoverned. Washington, D.C. wasn't like other cities. It didn't have major industries. It didn't manufacture anything. Its entire economy, its entire purpose, was government.
And when the government left, there was nothing to replace it. The people who are still here, and there aren't many, are the ones who couldn't leave or wouldn't leave. The elderly, who had nowhere to go. The poor, who had no resources to evacuate. The stubborn, who refused to believe it was really over. And people like me, people who came here to see it for themselves, to bear witness, to understand what happened. I met a woman 2 days ago who used to work at the State Department. She's living in an abandoned office building near Foggy Bottom, surviving on canned food she salvaged from the building's break room. She told me about the final weeks, how people stopped showing up for work because they weren't being paid, how the parking lots emptied out, how entire departments just ceased to function, how diplomatic cables went unanswered because there was no one left to answer them, how foreign embassies started evacuating their staff, how the international community watched us implode and did nothing, because what could they do? You can't save a country that won't save itself. She cried when she talked about it, not from sadness exactly, from frustration, from anger, because she saw it coming. They all saw it coming. The warning signs were everywhere. The unsustainable debt, the political polarization, the inability to compromise or cooperate, the erosion of institutional norms, the loss of public trust, the gutting of federal agencies, the brain drain as competent people left government service because they weren't being paid or respected, the infrastructure crumbling because maintenance wasn't sexy and didn't win elections, the social safety net fraying, the wealth inequality growing, the climate disasters mounting, all of it interconnected, all of it predictable, all of it ignored. We thought the system was too big to fail. We'd been told that since birth. America is exceptional. America is permanent. The Constitution will protect us. The institutions will hold. The checks and balances will work. And maybe they would have if we'd maintained them, if we'd funded them, if we'd taken them seriously. But we didn't. We treated government like a game, like a reality show, like something that existed for our entertainment rather than our survival. We elected people who promised to dismantle the very institutions they were supposed to run. We cheered when they succeeded. We cut taxes and wondered why services disappeared. We demanded everything and refused to pay for anything. We treated the national debt like it was someone else's problem. We kicked the can down the road for decades and then acted surprised when we ran out of road. The collapse wasn't a surprise, it was a choice. A series of choices made over and over again by millions of people who decided that short-term convenience was more important than long-term survival. We chose cheap goods over American manufacturing. We chose tax cuts over infrastructure investment.
We chose partisan victory over national interest. We chose conspiracy theories over expertise. We chose entertainment over information. We chose comfort over responsibility. And each choice seemed small at the time, insignificant, but they accumulated, they compounded, and eventually the weight of all those choices crushed the foundation we were standing on. I'm walking past the Supreme Court building now. It looks even more abandoned than the Capitol, if that's possible. The columns are stained, the steps are cracked. Someone broke the glass in one of the ground floor windows. I can see inside, overturned chairs, scattered papers, the detritus of departure. The building that was supposed to represent blind justice, impartial judgment, the rule of law. Empty, silent, irrelevant. There are no police in D.C. anymore, no fire department, no emergency services. If something happens to you, if you get hurt, if you get sick, if you're attacked, you're on your own. There are some groups trying to organize, some neighborhoods have banded together for mutual protection, but it's fragmented, localized. There's no city-wide coordination because there's no city government. The mayor left in November, the city council dissolved, the whole apparatus just collapsed. I've been thinking about what I'll tell people if I make it out of here, if I make it somewhere that's still functioning, still organized, still governed. And what I want to say is this: it didn't have to be this way. This wasn't inevitable. This wasn't fate. This was a choice, a long series of choices made by people who should have known better. And the saddest part is that we were warned, constantly, repeatedly. Economists warned us about the debt. Scientists warned us about climate change. Historians warned us about the patterns that lead to collapse. Political scientists warned us about democratic backsliding. Infrastructure engineers warned us about crumbling systems. Public health officials warned us about pandemic preparedness. Everyone who knew anything about anything was screaming warnings, and we tuned them out because the warnings were inconvenient and uncomfortable and required us to make sacrifices we weren't willing to make. We could have fixed it. In 2025, in 2026, even in 2028, we could have fixed it. It would have been hard, it would have required actual leadership and actual sacrifice and actual cooperation across partisan lines. It would have required raising taxes and cutting spending and making unpopular decisions. It would have required looking beyond the next election cycle and thinking about the next generation. But we could have done it. Other countries did it. Other countries faced similar challenges and made hard choices and survived. We didn't. We chose denial. We chose magical thinking. We chose to believe that America was too exceptional, too powerful, too permanent to fail. And now I'm standing in the ruins of that exceptionalism.
Standing in the capital of what was once the most powerful nation on earth, and it's silent, empty, abandoned. The monuments are still here, but they're just stone, just marble and granite and bronze. They don't mean anything without the institutions they were built to honor. They're graves now, tombstones for ideas that we let die. The wind is picking up. It blows through the empty streets, rustling the overgrown grass, carrying the smell of decay and stagnant water. It blows through the broken windows of government buildings, making that moaning sound that never stops. It blows through the Capitol dome, through the empty chambers, through the halls where laws were made and deals were cut and the business of governing happened. And the sound it makes is the sound of emptiness, of absence, of loss. This is what the silence of an empire sounds like. It's not dramatic, it's not explosive, it's just quiet, just empty, just the wind blowing through spaces that used to be filled with people and purpose and power. It's the sound of abandonment, of institutions left to rot, of promises unkept and responsibilities shirked. It's the sound of a nation that forgot that democracy requires maintenance, that freedom requires vigilance, that civilization requires effort. We thought we could take it for granted. We thought we could ignore the cracks in the foundation. We thought we could keep scrolling, keep shopping, keep living our individual lives while the collective structures that enabled those lives fell apart around us. We were wrong. And this is the price of that mistake, this silence, this emptiness, this tomb of a city that used to be the center of the world. I tried to tell you, we all tried to tell you. The signs were everywhere, the warnings were constant, The trajectory was clear, but you didn't want to hear it. None of us did, because hearing it would have meant doing something about it, and doing something about it would have been hard. So we didn't. We kept scrolling. We kept hoping someone else would fix it. We kept believing it would somehow work out. And now it's March 2032, and I'm standing in Washington, D.C., and there's no one here. The government is gone. The system failed. The empire fell. Not because it was inevitable, not because it was fate, but because we let it. Because we chose comfort over responsibility. Because we chose denial over action. Because we thought the system was too big to fail. We were wrong. This is what comes after. This is what happens when the center doesn't hold. This is the silence, the great, terrible, empty silence where power used to be. And if you're listening to this, if somehow this recording reaches you, learn from it. Don't make our mistakes. Don't take your institutions for granted. Don't assume they'll last forever just because they've always been there. Maintain them, fund them, participate in them, respect them.
Because once they're gone, once you've let them collapse into silence, you can't get them back. You can't scroll past this. You can't ignore this. This is real. This happened. This is happening. And the silence is deafening.